This is Eric Kirk. I'm with Chuck Rogers. This is Redwood Wonk. You're listening to KZZH, or you're watching us on Channel 12 Access Humboldt. And we are going to discuss national politics. A lot happening. We're just under 3 weeks from the election, and we've got a lot to discuss. Probably won't get to everything, but I just want to point out that we are open to talking about issues that are important to you, that are pertain to national politics. So you can contact me at ericvkirk@gmail.com if you ever want us to discuss a particular topic. But this is the first of the last 3 shows before the election, and things are heating up. We've got, why don't we start with, there is a confirmation hearing going for Justice Amy Barrett, which has started, I believe, on Monday, and we're on the 3rd day today. Chuck, what have you got to say?
Well, I would call it not a hearing, but a sham. I would call it political theater. I would call it a foregone conclusion, what the result is going to be. It's difficult to watch. It's, like these hearings have been since at least Robert Bork. You don't get any information. And look, in the Judge Barrett's defense, there are things that she should not say about hypothetical cases that may come before the court. So I get that. But these nominees over the last, 40 years or so just don't reveal very much information at all. I'm not even sure what the point is anymore. In fact, just to give you an example, Ted Cruz, I believe it was yesterday, was asking her about her kids, and how they're doing. That was after a 20-minute soliloquy about all kinds of things that were completely off the rails. So it's difficult to watch. It's predictable, and we already know what the vote is going to be. She is going to be on the court before the election. She will be there to take questions about any kind of challenge to the election, and has not said whether she would recuse or not, even given the public statements that Trump has made about why he nominated her to be someone there for election challenges and to be someone there to overturn Roe v. Wade and to get rid of Obamacare. And she won't answer questions about any of those, nor will she talk about whether she would recuse in any of those situations, even given what the public statements have been. So it's a complete sham. It's nothing but political theater, and it's sad.
Yeah, I want to make a couple of points, and she may not actually be the worst of who could be appointed. There is some talk that she might be in the center when it comes to economic issues, labor, maybe even car searches and the like, since Scalia in his last days actually had made kind of what you would consider a leftward turn on that. But we don't know. I guarantee it's not going to be like a Souter where the Democrats were opposed to him. He didn't have a paper trail. He hardly wrote anything. And right. And so I don't think she's going to be a surprise like a Justice Souter, because she does have, I'm sorry, the Democrats don't want to attack her for it, but kind of extreme religious views. And that is going to impact her view of abortion. Yeah. And the question is whether or not she's going to decide a case not so much on procedure and whether or not Roe v. Wade is a good precedent. But, it could very much lead to a discussion of fetal rights, of the rights of a pregnancy over the rights of a woman. And because, overturning Roe v. Wade doesn't make the abortion illegal at the federal level. It just basically allows states to make it illegal. And it's a tough discussion. They cannot do it. They can't attack her because we're in an election season. They can't attack her for her religious beliefs because it'll be framed in terms of they're attacking her for being Catholic, which is silly because Joe Biden is a devout Catholic. But that's what's going to happen. She talked a little bit yesterday about the super precedent. Not just precedent, but super precedent, things that are so far, beyond discussion at this point that they shouldn't be decided. She cited Brown v. Board, good sign that she's not going to overturn Brown v. Board. There are, judicial conservatives out there who thought that was a bad decision. And she won't overturn Plessy versus Ferguson, but she said that the discussion today with Roe v. Wade shows that it's not a super precedent. I'm very troubled by that statement because if Trump was going around bragging about how his court was going to overturn Brown v. Board, it would very much be a topic of discussion.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's and you're right, it's a sham. There's really not much. She won't talk about anything really in terms of that. Even when she was revealed to have signed an ad that not only opposed abortion but in vitro fertilization as on the same basis of a pro-life basis. She said her excuse was, "Well, I was walking out of church when I signed that, and I didn't really know what I'm signing." I mean, she's a lawyer who's about to be on the Supreme Court of the land, and she didn't bother to read what she was signing. What does that say? But the Democrats can't attack her. She comes across as really nice, nobody was there to point out, well, if Brown v. Board was being challenged today, Griswold versus Connecticut came up, that was the precursor to Roe v. Wade, in which it was determined that married couples have privacy rights to say, to be able to talk to their doctor about birth control, and it established that the right to privacy is an implied right, even though it's not specifically enumerated, and she wouldn't even commit to that.
Well, the thing, I agree with everything you just said. The thing that really bothers me the most, though, is that she comes from the strain of conservatism in the legal area that a lot of people refer to as originalists, who, and the most extreme of them, believe that, and she does. I mean, this is the one thing she has said in the, in the hearings, that she does believe, like Scalia did, in the original text and what they meant, what the founders and the writers of the Constitution meant in 1787. Whereas some of the other founders at the time wanted the Constitution to be a living, breathing, evolving document that tracked with society and things that might change in the future, which I think only makes sense. So the fact that she's going to make rulings based on what people thought in 1787 is just idiotic, and is wrong, and is actually dangerous in a society as large and as ours is. This is not 1787. So I would much prefer to have people on the court who are people of the 21st century, and that's not what we're going to get.
Well, and it's really important to point out here that there is a key difference. People don't understand it. A lot of people, you talk to people in the Federalist Society, and I had a lot of debates with them when I was in law school about this, but originalism and textualism are not the same thing. Originalism is the belief that you stick with the original intent of the drafters, and textualism is that you stick with the text of the Constitution. That's two different things, because, as you pointed out, there is an active debate among within legal circles as to what the original intent was, and there is a strong argument that the living document doctrine, that you're supposed to take into account the social, was the original intent. That's why they have the Ninth Amendment in there, which states that any rights retained by the people that aren't specifically enumerated will still be enforced. And you talk to somebody from the Federalist Society about it, they say, "Oh no, that's states' rights." It's like, no, that's the 10th Amendment. What you're arguing would make the 9th and 10th Amendment redundant, and that's not how we do construction of law. So there is that, and Justice Thomas is an extreme textualist. He takes the view that the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment, is based on the sentiments of the day, and therefore, if we wanted to have people being displayed in public in stocks and shamed and, have things thrown at
Yeah.
him, that would be perfectly acceptable because that was cruel and unusual at the time, and when you talk about, well, is an airplane flying low over your property a violation of your property rights, then of your privacy, even if they accept that privacy is a right that you have, the point is that, to try to go to any kind of originalism on that, one of the founding fathers, if they saw an airplane, would have run from it in terror, right? So how do you even
That's the whole
have
point.
that context?
That's the whole point. In fact, it was Jefferson and Madison. Correct me if I'm wrong on both of those, but Jefferson and Madison, who both encouraged a rereading of the Constitution, at least every 19 to 20 years, to make sure that it still stands with where the society is going. And so there were people even in that day who understood that what they were creating was a country that would be ever changing and ever evolving, and the Constitution should keep up with that to provide guidance as that happened. And I fear that that's not where she is.
No, it's not. And, people have to understand that the Constitution was framed in the context of common law, which is different from Roman law. Roman law is statute based. There are many, many more laws in a Roman law system. Common law actually leaves a lot of discretion to the judges. It's not, the Constitution is like only about 6,000 words long, even now with all the amendments. Yeah. And that's not very long for a constitution, whereas in a Roman law system, and 49 of our states are run by common law. Louisiana is run by Napoleonic Code, which is a Roman law concept. It's, you rely on precedent because precedent is how you fill in the gaps with the recognition that no statute can cover every single possibility. There's always going to be gaps that you need to fill. And right. And by the way, conservatives didn't oppose it until privacy became an issue for this. There was a right to have a contract that conservatives did against, by the way, Oliver Wendell Holmes. They're saying that you couldn't have regulations on safety regulation for bakers because it was interfering with the worker and the baker's right to negotiate a contract. So here you had the right to a contract. You'd had rulings about the right to travel. The right to a bunch of things that nobody objected to. Wasn't until you got to privacy and when it had an impact on a woman's right to choose that all of a sudden people are saying, oh, you can't just add new rights. We have the Bill of Rights. You have to stick to those. And a very myopic view of the 9th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, but that's the discussion we're in, and unfortunately, we're about to go to at least a 5-4 majority, if not a 6-3 majority, that is opposed to that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 6-3, and I think it's going to be 6-3 before the election. And she has not said whether she would recuse, and given the fact that Trump will certainly. Given what the numbers look like right now, probably lose and then challenge it. Yeah. And she'll be one of the votes on the court. And certainly she should recuse, but that's up to her. It's up to the justices.
Yeah, there's no law
on the Supreme Court. No, it's up to them to decide. And she has not said whether she would or whether she won't. So that's where we're headed. And then on November the 10th, the arguments begin for the Affordable Care Act during a pandemic that would take between 20 and 30 million people off of health care during a pandemic. And so we'll see what happens there.
I want to just, before we go on to another topic, I want to close out here because on my way here home from work, I was listening to an interview with Ted Cruz on All Things Considered, and he stated that, well, we need to have a 9th member because if there's a 4-4 decision, it will create a constitutional crisis. Absolutely unadulterated falsehood, because what happens with a 4-4 decision or any tied decision, that the lower ruling stands. There's no constitutional crisis. It just stands, whatever it was. So,
exactly.
but they're just absolutely making the case that we could be in crisis if we don't have that ninth judge. And it's just justice, because they're worried Roberts wobbles for them sometimes. And
but with Barrett, though, even with a wobbly Roberts, if Roberts wobbled enough to vote with the liberals, you'd still have 5-4 in favor of the conservatives.
Exactly.
So that's the whole idea of getting to 6-3, since they don't really trust Roberts to be as conservative as the rest of them are.
I want to talk about this more after the election, but I read an article suggesting that Roberts, if Biden wins, may actually retire in next year. Very important development, because I do think Roberts is concerned about the legacy of the court and where it's going.
Yeah, he may not want his name tied to what's going to be happening on a 6-3 conservative court, given the nature of conservatism in the times in which we find ourselves. So I have heard speculation about that as well. But we can only hope. Of course, a lot of things would have to fall in place for that to happen. So
All right. Why don't we kind of move into since we're talking about a Senate hearing? Why don't we start with some of the Senate races and what type of impact this can have? Because I think what the Democrats are doing right now is, and Ted Cruz was kind of complaining about this in the interview, is they're not even trying to defeat the nomination. They know it's a foregone conclusion. They're trying to frame the discussion with the microphones in a way that hurts the Senate majority's ability to maintain their Senate majority, because there are a bunch of Senate places that are challenged, and that's possibly even expanding. And why don't we start with the first one in South Carolina? Senator Graham is begging for money on Fox News every night, and is being attacked by Harrison, who is African-American, head of the Democratic Party there, and a little bit kind of invulnerable because there's no public record of his voting, right? And he's attacking him, pointedly. Attacked him and said, basically canceled the debate because Graham refused to be tested and reveal the test before they held a debate. And so the debate got canceled, and Graham's worried. What do you think about that race?
Well, he should be worried. In fact, if you look at enough polls, you can find some of them that actually put Harrison ahead by a couple of points now. And a lot of them have been 48-48 or 46-46 for a long time. But just this week, there are a couple of them that show Harrison up by about 2 points. And on top of that, Harrison is raising money at a record pace. There is money pouring into that race. And since we're kind of segueing from the hearings to the Senate race in South Carolina, there has been some speculation that the hearings that Lindsey Graham is a part of are actually good for the Democrats and not so good for the Republicans. And here's what I mean by that. Some of the, and this follows with what you were just saying, some of the issues that the Democrats are asking Judge Barrett about in these hearings have to do with hot button issues that are going to be coming before the court, such as the Affordable Care Act, Roe v. Wade, Social Security, all kinds of things, Medicare, Medicaid, a long list of things that are ridiculously popular with the American public in all 50 states. And it's giving a lot of airtime, hours and hours and hours of airtime for those who are watching these hearings, reminding people what they might lose if they keep putting senators like Lindsey Graham in, who will keep moving the court in this far right direction. So this might completely backfire on them in a catastrophic way for the Republicans. We'll see, but it does have the effect of bringing up these hot button issues that are overwhelmingly popular to the forefront again, and reminding people of the consequences of putting these conservative senators in the United States Senate who will make these decisions.
Now, and I want to finish up with South Carolina so we can get some of the other races, but South Carolina is a very conservative state even today. It is changing. About 28% of the voters are black, but they are energized. That's where Biden actually pretty much turned the primaries around in his favor because of very strong turnout of black voters for him. And they are energized. So
Yeah,
they're only less than a third of the vote, but they are coming out. And
absolutely.
there are a lot of other people who don't like that Graham so basically, with what appears to be some real serious hypocrisy, was so specific 4 years ago, saying he would not support, even if the Republican was the president, and even if it was only the first term, he would not support,
Yeah,
installing a Supreme Court justice in an election year, especially not days literally before
right.
the election. And I think it's hurting him with people who actually do want at least some basic integrity in their.
Well, he said that in the wake of the whole Merrick Garland scandal, where McConnell decided we're not even going to give this president a chance to have his nominee have a hearing. We're not even going to do that because it's an election year and the primaries have already started. So Graham said that at that time, thinking that what are the odds? What are the odds that that would even happen again? He was rolling the dice there, thinking that's never going to happen. So I'll make sure people think that I am seeing this clearly. And of course, it did happen. And now he's paying for it. He's paying for it big time because, he said, use my words against me. And Jamie Harrison is doing exactly that.
Exactly that. Yeah.
And it's having an impact. And you can see it in the polls. And there's a chance, that race is now a toss up.
Yes.
And so there's a chance that Lindsey Graham might lose his job.
Well, and yeah, I would still probably, if I was strictly betting and indifferent to the politics, I would probably still bet on Lindsey Graham. It's South Carolina, and people, as they, sometimes the polls change as they get closer to the election. I'm sure the Republicans are going to remind a lot of the white Republicans, traditionalists there as to why they support Republicans. But Graham has made a couple mistakes. Last week, he kind of did a Biden. He said, well, you can get anywhere you want in this state if you're black, as long as you're conservative. Right. Well, that's kind of like a similarity to you ain't black if you're voting Republican. Harrison jumped right on it. And so there's a chance, and if there's a lot of momentum going in here, and there's a high turnout from Democrats, can very well go that way. I would still say the odds are against it, but we don't know. This is unusual.
I think there is going to be a high turnout. Maybe we'll get to this later, but there is early voting, as we know, has started in most states, and there are record turnouts day by day in every state where it's going on. So I think there's going to be what was it in 2016? I believe both presidential candidates got votes in the range of 60 million or something like that. It was 60 something for each one. It could be 70 something for each one this time. I mean, that's how many more people. In fact, the reports today just here in California at this same time in 2016, comparing so far 10 times the number of ballots returned as compared to the same time in 2016. Now, some of that is because of the pandemic, of course, but it's also because people are energized, especially on the Democratic side.
It's I think we're over 10 million votes cast so far, and we're still 3 from the election. And that's setting records. I do want to talk about the large lines in a little bit, but I want to move the discussion over to North Carolina. Of course, Tillis came up positive. He's showing up. He's taking his mask off in the hearings when he's talking, which is, when you're supposed to have the mask on, but he's, doing the whole thing. And that hurt him, but people thought it would at least be offset by the text messages, which indicate that there was an affair by Cunningham. But a few polls out, and Cunningham remains anywhere from 4 to 10 points ahead in the polls. not moving so far. Republicans are promising more revelations. I think they're hoping because he's in the military reserve, there's going to be an Army investigation of it because you're not supposed to have affairs when you're in the Army, and I think, and there's rumors of a possible second affair. He's just not answering questions about it. Said this is a private matter, and so far it hasn't hurt him. And and we're about a week and a half into that particular scandal, but it may be that voters in North Carolina have kind of made up their mind, and it might be that Tillis getting infected is hurting them just because that's bad judgment. There is no excuse for them getting infected. They are supposed to be protected. They're supposed to be taking the precautions, but of course he got infected most likely at the Rose Garden spreader event. And,
there you go.
And so that that's going to hurt him.
Yeah, it will. In fact, I saw an aggregate of the polls, and Cunningham, at least I believe this was yesterday when they kind of did some averaging there, and Cunningham is still ahead by about 7 overall. You're right. I think it goes from 4 to 10 to 11. It's about 7, and it's staying there, and that's where it's been for a while now. And I think that this election is baked. People have decided, and they are voting in such large numbers right now that there's not going to be a whole lot of change between now and November the 3rd because so many people are already voting. And that's going to have an impact on how much change there can be between now and Election Day. So I think I have North Carolina in that Senate race leaning blue, and we'll see what happens. But
I do too. I would have it in likely blue if it wasn't for Cunningham,
if it wasn't for his problems.
Not keeping his pecker in his pocket. I mean, that was just I'm a little angry about that because if you're going to do those kind of things, don't run for office.
Exactly. Common sense.
It's just as that. And if you're going to have an affair, don't put it on an electric record. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, of course, for Republicans, the argument against that is that Donald Trump is the president. And, so.
Yeah, they've got a hard time. All right, I want to discuss one more Senate race that's kind of in the news, and it's actually 2 of them. They're both in Georgia, and some polls came out today. A TV Survey USA poll has Purdue up by 3, but Quinnipiac has Ossoff up by 6. That's the biggest poll in his lead that I've seen. Quinnipiac is a good pollster, and also they have Warnock off in the special election. Now, the special election is a little bit different. You've got a bunch of candidates, and the top 2 will end up in a runoff if nobody gets more than 50%, kind of like our supervisor races here. But he's ahead by 4 in one, and he's ahead by 19 in another. It's a big in a Quinnipiac one. But in that Quinnipiac one, he is up at 41 points. And the 2 primary Republican candidates, Loeffler and Collins, are at 20 and 22 respectively. That's about even with Lieberman, the other Democrat, at 5. Now, it does appear that the Democrats have coalesced around Warnock, and that's good news for them. And, and it's possible that he doesn't do as well in the runoff. He can get 40% and maybe get 45% in the runoff. That's the theory, but doesn't necessarily work that way. Because people are in the Republicans voting for one Republican or the other may not like that other Republican. So we've got that. I do want to talk a little bit about Georgia, and that might be our segue into the presidential election, because I want to have a conversation about the states that are still battleground states and voter repression, because voter repression is going on in Georgia and a couple other states. But I want you to comment on the Senate races.
On the one hand, I think Ossoff is going to win that election. So that's the one I feel pretty good about, the Ossoff race. I think he's going to win primarily because his base of support is all in Atlanta. He's been in that Atlanta area for a long time, and he's run for office before, so he has a little bit of statewide name recognition. Although he ran for a congressional seat, but it got a lot of publicity. So I feel pretty good about the Ossoff race. On the other side, I worry a little bit about the numbers you just cited in the other one, because the two Republicans are both in the 20s, and I'm not convinced that the Republican who loses, the other one is not going to absorb a large portion of the Republican vote for the candidate who does not make it. So I could see that runoff being a 1 or 2 point runoff race, which I believe is the first Tuesday in January, I believe.
Yes.
So I'm not as confident about that one. But I'm more confident about Ossoff. I am confident, and I think I've said this before on the show, that the Democrats will get one of the seats from Georgia. They'll get one of them. I hope they get two, but I think they'll get one.
All right, and I just want to point out that about 2 months ago there was questions of whether Warnock could even make it into the runoff. That it was going to be two Republicans running. He's doing a lot better now. But I want to take a look at, and you and I both have our maps that we've done, and this is a segue into the presidential race, because I want to discuss where we're at with that. And if you look at my map. I'm kind of going back and forth between. I want to talk about the battleground states of Texas, Ohio, and Georgia right now. I think North Carolina, and the reason I want to discuss those is because I've got, even though there's real close races, I've got Texas as a lean Republican, and I might actually by next week move it into likely Republican. And I've got Ohio. I had Ohio as a lean Democrat, lead Biden over the weekend, but after a court ruling, I'm now saying lean Republican, but not in Georgia. And the reason I'm saying this is because there have been two court rulings now with Trump-backed courts, in which lower courts have ruled that you've got to have more than one drop box in a county, because the governors in both Texas and Ohio have decided that, no, one drop box, no matter how big your county is, there can be millions of people in your county, one drop box in the county. Yeah. And the court, a panel up for Ohio, and then just yesterday in Texas said, it's either unconstitutional to have more than one, or it's up to the governor or secretary of state, in which case it is. That's suppression. You've got because you've got huge lines. And huge lines look like good news. I remember this 4 years ago in Pennsylvania. You saw this line that just went, for I think about half a mile, and that's inspiring to look at. But what you have to realize is what those lines mean is there's not enough polling places in those communities. And if you notice, most of the people in those lines are African American in Georgia and in Texas. I haven't really seen lines in Ohio. I don't know quite how that's working. But so, for every person that's in that line, and good on them for being willing to wait. I think some waits were as much as 8 hours. Good on them for that, for doing that, for being able to set up time. But for every person who's in one of those lines, there's somebody driving there to vote who says, man, I got to pick up my kids in an hour. I can't wait for that. I got to be back at work. I can't wait for that. And it's mostly in Atlanta, the urban areas of Texas where this is happening. You are looking at voter suppression in action. Now, I'm bullish in Georgia because there is a big movement to get people to those polls. The Democrats have organized bus rides and everything to get them to that. And it may be that those lines actually died down after a while, not because of lack of interest, but because they actually did get their votes out of the way. And it's still early. The Pennsylvania lines I saw 4 years ago were days before the election. But they are organizing, and Georgia has experienced voter suppression over the past few elections, and their voters, particularly African Americans, but other Democrats as well, are angry about it. And so that's why I'm bullish on both the Senate races and and Biden's chances of flipping that state. Less so in Ohio, although he's doing really strongly in Ohio in the polls, but they are suppressing the vote there, and they are suppressing it in Texas. And I'm sure they'll be suppressing in other states as well. But I think in Texas and Ohio, it can make the difference.
Well, I don't know which of my maps you have, but just today I moved Texas into the toss-up column. So We disagree a little bit on Texas, and here's why. Harris County, which is Houston, 4.7 million people right there. It's one of the largest counties in the country. I agree. You are seeing very long lines there, 8 to 10 hours. But people are voting. In fact, some of the numbers that have been coming back, 6 figures worth of people have voted on a daily basis in Harris County so far. And they are very angry at Governor Greg Abbott, just as the people in Georgia are angry. The people in especially Harris County are angry at Greg Abbott because Harris County, that was his whole deal. That was Abbott's whole deal about having only one drop-off box in each county, because he knew that would impact Harris County especially.
Yes.
So the people are up in arms about that. And you're right. They see that is voter suppression. And they are exactly right. That's exactly what it is. And they're fighting back against it. And they're turning out in record numbers. And the other thing about Texas is another statistic I saw yesterday. Travis County, which is Austin, another very large city, they have been doing voter registration since the 2016 election. They have been focused on voter registration. And it's a number that I could not believe. I've never seen it before. 97% of eligible voters in Travis County are now registered, and they are angry too. And of course, Austin is the kind of the progressive oasis in Texas. 97% registration. Yeah. That shows that people know what's going on. And as you say, they see it as suppression. They're fighting back against it. And similar voter registration has been going on in San Antonio and Dallas and Fort Worth and so on. So I also saw a poll recently where Biden is ahead a couple of points in Texas. So, and it's also true that in one of the Senate races there, MJ Hagar, who was challenging the incumbent John Cornyn, is now within striking distance. So there's so much happening in Texas. I have decided to become at least optimistic enough to move it into the toss-up lane. So we'll see. But I did have it as lean red. But now I have it as a toss-up. I think it's possible, and Biden is funneling a lot of money into it. I hope he actually, in a safe way, visits Texas, and I think that's what he's going to have to do. If he really thinks Texas is a possibility, he's going to have to show up. He's going to have to go there, and show that he knows, he hears people there, and he needs to show up.
I agree. Now, interesting thing is Trump today went to Iowa. He should not have to go to Iowa. He won handily in 2016. Right. It's a state that's been moving red over the years, and he's in trouble there. And we didn't discuss that Senate race, but it looks like Greenleaf has got a possibility of defeating Joni Ernst there. He was there today. I don't know if Joni Ernst joined him or not. I'd be curious to see that. But the fact that he's there is in trouble. Yes, he's going to have to go to Texas. Biden was in Ohio. He's been in Ohio twice now. And he's going to trying to run up the score there. So they obviously feel a little bit confident about that. I want to, we'll look at your map and say, but I want to take a look. I actually am almost ready to put Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan in the safe state, just because the polls have not changed. He's remained anywhere from 6 to 11 points ahead in each of them in almost all the polls, unless you count Trafalgar or something like that, which is a Republican polling outfit, which is an outlier this time around. Unless they're right, and we're totally off. But I'm almost ready because we're getting late in the race and the dynamics haven't changed. I would put Pennsylvania there, except, and I may actually leave Wisconsin out because we know that Trump can't let all 4 of those states go. And it looks like he's making a stand in Pennsylvania. He's going to put his money in there. He's pulled money out of add money out of the others, and he's going to hope to win in the Sun Belt. Arizona got a little bit closer. Then it's not quite as close now, but with Kelly ahead in double digits, he's going to have a tough one there. He's making a play in Nevada. Now, Nevada is one of the 3 states that Trump was hoping to challenge to be on offense that Hillary Clinton had won in 2016. It's looking hopeless for him in New Hampshire. I'm ready to make New Hampshire a safe state if nothing's changed there next week. Minnesota's not working out for him. He totally misread the message of what happened there over the summer. So he's making a play in Nevada and hoping maybe he can pry some Latino votes off. He's actually improving somewhat in polls a little bit with African Americans and Latinos. Not much. He's not going to get the majority, but he's actually doing a little bit better, but doesn't offset what he's lost in the white working class. I mean, there is white working class votes against him. College-educated women in the suburbs is why he's going to have a real hard time winning in Pennsylvania, as well as the white working class votes. So looking at my map, I've got Pennsylvania as a lean, and I'm probably not going to take it out of there because Trump knows he can't lose that. He's got to win there, win in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, Texas, obviously, and the rest, and then just basically thread the needle to win. If we could take a look at the winding road to victory, which is in the 538 thing, you can go to the website and see it. You see this winding road, and you see that the blue extends well past the where the Trump victory could be. It has Ohio as blue right now. I'm not really agreeing with that. It has Maine as pink. I actually don't think, well, not all of Maine, the 2nd district of Maine. I know that there have been a couple of polls that show Trump ahead there. I still say lean Biden on that, as I do in the 2nd district of Nebraska. We can talk about that in a minute, but I want to give you a chance to talk about your map.
Well, you mentioned the 538 winding road. I recommend that people pay very close attention to that because there are very few pathways for Donald Trump to win. And if you look at the pathways on the 538 winding road map, for Trump to win, there are some commonalities among I believe it's 3 pathways. They all include Texas. And if I'm not looking at it now, but if I'm not mistaken, it's Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania that are all common to the pathway for Trump. And he's in trouble in all 3 of those. So that's interesting. The other thing is that part of the explanation for this goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show. And that has to do with the fact that the Republicans have chosen to have these confirmation hearings right now, and the Democrats are bringing up issues like the Affordable Care Act and other issues that are important to people and that are popular. And if you look at what's going on in Iowa that you just mentioned, Joni Ernst is running on Trump's law and order, which is a complete misread of what's going on, as you indicated. The opponent, Greenfield, is running on, guess what? Health care and Social Security protection. And Donald Trump won 93 of the 99 counties in Iowa the last time. Right now, that state is a toss-up. So that shows how the Republicans are completely misreading this. And that's why on the 538, there are only a few pathways for Trump to win this. And the fact is, the Republicans really don't stand on any policy right now. They're running on fear and anger and hate, whereas what people want to hear about, according to every pathway, is healthcare, Social Security, and coronavirus, and they're ignoring all of that.
I agree. I actually have the winding road up, and the way it works is the blue extends well onto the 270, past the 274 Biden. He's at Pennsylvania, is of course the tipping state they've got, and then after that, Nebraska 2, then Florida, then Arizona, then North Carolina, then Ohio, and now they've got Georgia as blue. I didn't even notice that. It wasn't that way this morning. So I think these polls have changed that. Then they've got Maine 2. And then after that, Iowa's pink and Texas is pink. And then it goes to Arkansas. And I think that's all pretty safe for Trump after that. But there's a chance he could lose Texas, Iowa, and I think he's going to lose Maine too. And I'll explain why later. Not that that's all that important, but well, it could be in theory. But yeah, I've noticed that they flipped to Georgia. That's so. In order for him to win, he's got to come back in Georgia, Ohio, North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, Nebraska too, and Pennsylvania. And it looks like the way they've shaded it, looks like they're saying that Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota are out of reach. So,
and let's not forget, voting is already underway. Voting is already underway in a massive way. So for him to flip some of the folks who have supposedly already made their decisions in those states, there are fewer and fewer of those people available every single day. And, I think there's also a chance he's going to lose Florida because he's completely ignored 65 and above, which is a big part of the Florida constituency, because he hasn't been paying attention to COVID-19. And that constituency is the most vulnerable in this pandemic. And he's completely cavalier about the whole thing. So and of course, if he doesn't win Florida, then what does he do? I mean,
he can't win.
Where do you go then?
Yeah, no, he has to win Florida, and he's losing seniors for exactly the reasons you bring up. He tried to transform him getting COVID and making this incredible recovery into a Superman thing. He literally wanted to wear a Superman T-shirt as he was going in, and he wanted to say it was an act of God to help him become aware of the treatment. His son Eric is calling it a vaccine, saying, "Oh yes, this is a vaccine he's been pushing for a long time." Eric Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. They've got these things out there, and they don't realize that the vast majority of Americans seem to view it in terms of he was reckless. That's how he got infected. He was in denial. That's how he got infected. That's how so many people at that Rose Garden event got infected. Right. And he's in trouble in Florida. He's down by 4 or 5 points average in Florida. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he's even had Rasmussen or Trafalgar giving him leads lately in that. And when you've got Trafalgar giving the other side a 2-point lead, the Democrats' 2-point lead, you got problems, because that is like a completely biased polling, wanting to deliver a good message to fire up Trump voters, and they've got a problem there. So he cannot win without Florida. There's no scenario in which he wins without Florida. And he's got a problem.
Well, that's why I think the whole plan is to challenge the election. I think if you're a fly on the wall in the Oval Office when whoever it is he listens to, if anybody, is in there and they're talking about what's going to happen, I think the whole strategy is, look, we're going to lose this election, but we're going to challenge it. And here's how we're going to do it. And his team of lawyers is talking about challenging every mail-in ballot in a pandemic year. And in states that have been voting by mail for years at this point. So I think that their whole strategy now just depends on the Supreme Court. Yeah. And I think that's it. I think they know they're going to lose the election.
Or in some states where if they can convince Republicans in the state legislatures to override the election results by selecting electors for him, I don't think that many people are going to want to go down the ship with them on that. I just think that they would be putting their own careers not at risk but ending them, because I don't think American people would stand for that.
I think that's right. And that gets to another point, and that is this is all about power. And it is about a minority of Americans, old, wealthy, male Republicans trying to hang on to power, trying to maintain the status quo, trying to not allow change to happen, trying to not have to confront the future. That's what this is all about. It's a last gasp for that far right wing of the Republican Party. It's about power. And so that's why they're hoping that the Supreme Court is going to reinstall Donald Trump. It's all about a minority ruling the majority, and that is not going to end well. And they should know that. We've seen that down through history all over the world. Minority rule never ends well, and that's what they're trying to construct here. in their zeal to maintain power, instead of going with how the country is naturally changing over time. They're trying to put us in 1840 and leave us there. And it's just not going to work. And how that unravels for them, let's hope, is peacefully. Let's hope.
All right. We are getting close to the end of the show here. How about a prediction or two?
Okay, well, following on that, my prediction is that the time between November the 3rd and January 20th, which is Inauguration Day, is going to be characterized, or can be characterized, by one word, and that is struggle. It's going to be a struggle between Election Day and Inauguration Day. There's no way to avoid it because Trump is not going to accept defeat. I'm convinced of that. He's not emotionally or psychologically capable of accepting bad news like that. So I think prediction one is that the intervening time between Election Day and Inauguration Day is going to be a struggle. The other prediction is that I predict that the blue states, if Trump remains in office and if everything goes his way, the blue states will take a page out of the Republicans' playbook over the last 40 years and just start passing laws in state legislative bodies that they know are probably unconstitutional, but they're going to go their own way. That's what the Republicans did in response to Roe v. Wade for years and years and years. They passed all kinds of laws that restricted access to choice, knowing that they were unconstitutional, but it took decades for any of those cases to get decided, but they did it anyway. So I think at the worst case for blue states, they'll just go their own way at the state legislative level.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about my map by next week is going to become much more dark primary color oriented. I've got a few in there that say, likely rather than safe, but I'm going to start moving things into the safe one way or another because at that point we'll be under 2 weeks from right. the election, and the October surprises have either been gone against Trump or have been really weak. Today's an October surprise, the Biden emails allegedly taken from Hunter Biden's computer. The story got taken off Twitter because it's not credible, right? I mean, it's just, and yet Giuliani is hanging his hat on that. They're frustrated that nobody's going to do it. The longer we get into this and Trump can't do something, I really think the last chance is Biden has to show dementia or something in the last debate next week, assuming that happens. Also, real quickly, I think Maine, even though the polls are showing that Trump is ahead, I think won even by as many as 9 points, that second district, I think it's going to go to Biden because I think there's a strong movement right now. There is a lot of energy about wanting to take out Trump and wanting to take out Collins. And I think the Democrats are going to be so energized, she's going to lose all the Democrats who supported her before, and maybe even a few Republicans. They're not impressed with her centrism. And I think there's going to be so much energy that even that rural portion is going to go blue.
Yeah. One last thing, if we have just a quick minute, I want to advise people to check on their voter registration and go to Ballot Tracks. That's BALLOT, and Tracks, TARX. I did that and discovered that my registration had become inactive, and they don't know why. I always vote, but I called the Humboldt County voter folks, and we got it all fixed. And I think people should, especially people who are planning to show up in person, they need to check on that so that they don't show up on November 3rd and something's wrong. I've never had a problem with registration like that, so I was surprised, and I'm glad I checked.
Because you vote like clockwork.
Yes, absolutely. But for some reason, and when they spent a lot of time on the phone with me to fix it, I appreciate that. But people need to double check on that. And then if you're going to mail your ballot in, make sure you go to Ballot Tracks, and that's Tracks with an X, and it will tell you when it's received and whether it's been counted. So make sure you do that.
And if you haven't gotten your ballot yet, it's a possibility you've got a problem. So call them up.
That's why I called, because I hadn't gotten mine, and that's what happened. I now have it. So,
all right. Lastly, ericvkirk@gmail.com if you want my ballot proposition initiatives. I think a lot of people have already voted. But I do want to thank everybody. I want to thank Access Humboldt for hosting us. But we will be back next week. And, we're getting really close to the election here. I think the election is solidifying, but we'll see if some Comey letter type thing happens. All right. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Matt Knight, for engineering tonight.